So today I'm going to be doing the horror book tag. My neighbors just got home and their dog's really happy. It's super sweet, but like, come on. I'm gonna punch this dog in the face. Why, hello. So today I am going to be doing, let me double check. I'm clearly always prepared. Okay. So today I'm going to be doing the horror booktube tag. This tag was originally created by Alex over at Hey Little Thrifter, and I love Alex's channel so much. I've watched her for a couple of years now, and she puts out fantastic videos. She's actually doing a series of videos right now where she talks about her favorite horror movies by decade, and I just love her channel so much. But anyway, she made this tag about a year ago, and I've been wanting to do it since then. So I figure, what is a more perfect time than now? Nothing. It doesn't exist. So the first question is, how and when did you get into horror? So I have been obsessed with all things scary since I was a kid. I would say probably 7 or 8 years old. I just remember from that age just loving to be scared. And I would always be the one at sleepovers that would initiate seances and Bloody Mary and light as a feather, stiff as a board. I loved that feeling of, you know, getting my heart racing and just getting everyone riled up. I always loved going to haunted houses at like Halloween carnivals and listening to and telling ghost stories. And I've always loved scaring people. I still love scaring people to this day. Like, that part of my brain hasn't matured past 8 years old. Probably a few other parts as well. Let's be real. The next question is, what was the first horror book that you read? For me, that is most likely Scary Stories to Tell in the Dark by Alvin Schwartz and Stephen Gamble. This is not the edition that I read as a kid. I actually own the ones that look more similar to those, but this is a recent edition that I picked up, and it's a bind up of all 3 books. And it also has the original illustrations, which I know that it was re-released with new illustrations and everyone was like, nah. So they re-released it with the original illustrations that are so scary and made the book what it was. I'm trying to find like a really good one. There's so many good ones, but like, what's one that really freaked me out? For instance, Terrifying. This was definitely one of the first. And I also vividly remember reading this book, which is, it's an I Can Read book, In a Dark, Dark Room and Other Scary Stories, also by Alvin Schwartz. This was not the original edition either. I actually just picked this up because I'm gonna be doing a video very soon. I'm actually gonna be doing a vlog where I read books that scared me as a kid. So these are obviously featured on that list. But yeah, I just remember there being a particular story in here. These illustrations are not the original illustrations, so that's kind of a bummer because those were terrifying. I can't find the one that really, really freaked me out. Okay, the green ribbon. Okay. Okay, so these are not the original illustrations, but I really like them a lot. They're very Tim Burton-esque, and I'm looking forward to reading it. Oh yeah. What? But those were definitely 2 of the first books that I can remember reading that scared me as a kid. The next question is, what horror-related goodness can we expect from your channel? So I love to read horror, obviously. I do also read other genres, but horror and thrillers have always been my favorite genres because, again, I've just always loved being scared. And since I've come back to my channel from being on a hiatus, I've been reading horror a lot more, and I've made sure to film more videos dealing with horror. I've actually put up 3 different reading vlogs that all have to do with reading horror in the past few months. So if you're interested in checking those out, I will link them down below. You can definitely expect horror related goodness from my channel. I mean, it's my favorite genre, and while I do read other things, it's my favorite genre. So it's the majority of what I will be reading on this channel. The next question is, do you have any favorite themes or subgenres within horror? Okay, so with this, it's gotta be haunted houses, the woods, haunted asylums, anything haunted, basically anything haunted. And I also love anything to do with dolls, serial killers, slasher stories, slasher films. I've actually done a whole video where I talk about different themes and settings and tropes that I love in horror. So I'm gonna link that down below. It is entitled My Favorite Spooky Things. It's like a 15-minute video where I just talk about everything I love in horror. So if you guys want to check that video out, I would definitely recommend it because there's a lot more in that I haven't mentioned in this video. The fifth question is to name an underrated horror novel or author. For this one, I'm gonna go with a young adult trilogy, and the first book, which is called The Devouring by Simon Holt. This was a series that I read when I first started Booktube. I remember the Readables had recommended it, and I'm really showing my age here, but she had recommended it and I picked him up instantly. It's this horror trilogy about a teenage girl who is such a huge horror buff. She loves horror. She and her best friend love to scare her little brother. They love to watch horror movies. They love everything about it. And in their hometown, there's like this legend that has to do with like this entity called the Vors. And it's just like a spooky ghost story that they tell around the winter solstice because that's when the legend supposedly takes place. And when they tell that story, they actually bring forth those spirits and they take over the girl's little brother's body. It was really good. I remember there was like these dreamscape kind of scenarios, I think in the last book. And it really reminded me of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, season 1, episode Nightmares. If you know, you know. I thought it was so good and I really haven't heard anyone else ever talk about that series. So that book and that author has remained one of my favorite underrated horror authors, though I haven't seen him write anything in a really long time. So I don't know if he's still around or what. The sixth question is to name an overrated horror novel or author. For this one, I'm gonna go with a thriller writer, so it's not exactly horror, but it's really the only one I could think of, and that is Final Girls by Riley Sager, and just Riley Sager in general. Now I say that not having read Riley Sager's 3 other books, which I own over there, and I bought them because everyone raves about them, so I need to pick those up. But I read this book a couple years ago and I just felt like it was pretty mediocre and I saw the plot twist coming. However, I did enjoy the writing, so like I said, I do want to give Riley Sager another try. I have his other books. I'm gonna do it. Maybe I'll do a reading vlog where I read all of his books, maybe reread this one and then read the other 3 if you guys would be interested in that. But yeah, for this one, I'm gonna have to say, at least now, I consider Riley Sager to be a bit overrated. The next question is to recommend 3 of your favorite horror novels. The first book that I have to recommend for this is We Have Always Lived in the Castle by Shirley Jackson. This is a book about 2 sisters and their uncle, and they are the only surviving members of the Blackwood family. Years ago, their entire family was poisoned, and the oldest sister, Constance, was accused of the crime, but then acquitted. But the townspeople still hate the sisters. They hate the family because they believe that Constance did it. And I have to mention this one because it's my first Shirley Jackson. It was the book that made me fall in love with Shirley Jackson, and it's so strange and just perfect, and I would definitely recommend. It's also really short, so I definitely recommend this one. The next book that I am going to recommend is White is for Witching by Helen Oyeyemi. This is a book that I read a couple of months ago. I actually read it in a horror reading vlog, which I will link down below. But it is a story that is told from the perspectives of a haunted house, as well as a young woman and her family members and her friends and lover. And the women in her family, the house is obsessed with them. The house messes with them, makes them do things, makes them mentally unwell. And it's just a really creepy, eerie, but also really beautiful book. It's like literary horror, and I don't think I've ever read anything quite, I definitely haven't ever read anything quite like it. So I would recommend that book. The last book that I'm gonna recommend is a book of short stories, and it is Ghost Summer by Tana, Naribe, Dewey. This is a book of short stories that all take place in Florida, I believe, or at least most of them do. It's written by a Black horror author who is so talented. I kind of wanna call her the female Stephen King, but I kind of don't, because I feel like she's amazing in her own right and doesn't need to be compared to anyone. But considering how hyped Stephen King is, I feel like it's a pretty nice compliment. They're all scary, spooky, apocalyptic tales. They were just really fun to read. And it wasn't strictly horror. In fact, they weren't super scary. There were some creepy bits here and there, but it mostly was just like a book that made me feel a lot of things. Like it made me feel emotions. And there were some scary bits, but like again, it wasn't super scary. But I would highly recommend this book because it was so good. The next question is recommend a book for someone who is new to the horror genre. I am going to recommend Coraline for this prompt because Coraline is, first of all, Coraline by Neil Gaiman is such a fantastically creepy little novel. It's young adult, but that does not mean it's not scary. It is a little more tame when it comes to horror because it is young adult, but at the same time, don't let that fool you because it can get pretty creepy. But basically I would recommend it just because I feel like this is a good introduction to horror. For those of you who don't know, Coraline follows a young girl named Coraline Jones, and she has just moved from a big city to a small town where she lives in a sort of apartment complex house called the Pink Palace. One night Coraline finds a door to another world, and that world basically mirrors her own world, but it makes everything seem so much better. It makes her never want to go back to her real home until one day she realizes that there's some dark, sinister forces at work in this world. If you're familiar with my channel, you know I love Coraline, and I couldn't not recommend this book for one of these prompts. Okay, the next question is, are there any book to film adaptations that you particularly loved or hated? So for this one, it's gonna be like probably everyone's answer, but it's gotta be The Shining for me. The book is phenomenal. The movie is phenomenal. I watched the movie before I read the book, and they're both different and the same. It's kind of hard to describe, especially considering Stephen King has commented on that movie and said he's not a fan of it, but I can definitely see the differences and the similarities and appreciate each for what they have to offer. Also, keeping in line with Stephen King, I love chapter 1. I haven't seen chapter 2, and I haven't finished the book yet. So I read like the first, I think, 300 pages of the book, but I have to say from what I read of the book and seeing the movie, I really love that adaptation. Another one is The Silence of the Lambs. It's a classic. Another is Bates Motel, which is actually a TV adaptation of Psycho by Robert Bloch. This is one of my favorite shows. It's a prequel story to Norman Bates and, you know, how he comes to be the psycho that he is. And it's really an eerie, sad, and beautiful adaptation. I just couldn't recommend that TV show enough. Another TV adaptation that I have to mention is The Haunting of Hill House, which is a show on Netflix. While I read this book and didn't love it, I know I still feel shame about this because this is Shirley Jackson's most famous novel. When I read this for the first time, I didn't love it, and I do want to go back because I feel like there's something wrong with me and I need to fix that. Maybe listen to the audiobook. Regardless, I loved the Netflix TV series. So yes, highly recommend the TV adaptation of this. The book, even though I didn't love it, I would still recommend that you pick it up because it's a classic haunted house story that really kickstarted the genre. Adaptations that I hated. So for me, Dracula, the 1993 or 4 movie with Winona Ryder and Gary Oldman and Keanu Reeves. It was horrible, but I mean, it's also kind of campy fun, I'm not gonna lie. But when you read the book and you watch the movie, it's like, come on, you could have done so much better. Hey guys, future editing Penelope here, and I don't know why I didn't mention my #1 dreaded movie adaptation of all time. I'm thinking of ending things, but I will say that the last video I uploaded was a book versus movie review on I'm Thinking of Ending Things, so I will link that down below and I hope you guys will check it out. It's pretty salty, I'm not gonna lie. The next question is, how do you discover new or new to you horror books? Okay, so I'm gonna name some channels and I'll leave all of their links in the description below. But first is Missy over at the channel Binge Reader. Missy has been one of my best friends on Booktube since I started, and she has such great horror recommendations, so definitely recommend Missy. I would also, of course, recommend the creator of this tag, Alex over at Hey Little Thrifter. My friends Tabitha and Nat, they have an Instagram account which is called Shelf Fulfilling Prophecy. They read lots of different genres, but one of their favorite genres is horror, and they have great recommendations. Cameron Chaney, Regina's Haunted Library, and Valancourt Books Instagram. They always have really good recommendations. The next question is, what was the last horror book that you bought? I actually just bought quite a few for a vlog that I'm actually going to be starting today, where I read scary books from my childhood, but I will show you guys this one. This is a tin case of 5, I think it's 5. Yeah, wait, 1, 2. Yeah, 5 different Goosebumps novels in their classic edition. It's called like the retro edition, something. You can get it on Amazon, and they have all the classic covers that I remember seeing all the time in my scholastic library as a kid. Oh, let that take you back. Oh my gosh, is it gonna smell like the books did then? Oh my god, they do. They do. They don't feel the same. It's like different material. It's crazy that I remember this, but they smell very similar. So the last question is, what horror book is at the top of your wish list? So I have so many, naturally, but for this one I have to say the Penguin horror classics. I have 2 of them here. This is The Haunting of Hill House by Shirley Jackson, and this is The Raven, and it also has other short stories by Edgar Allan Poe. These books are just so beautiful, and I think there's like 3 more, and I've had them on my wish list for so long, and I really need to just bite the bullet and buy them. But yeah, I love these editions so much, and I would love to collect all 5 of them or 6 of them. So the next prompt is to tag someone, and for this I'm not going to tag anyone because I think most horror booktubers have done this tag, but if you have a channel and you end up doing this tag, please link me below because I would love to check it out. In the comments below, I would love for you guys to let me know if you have read any of these books, and if you did, what you thought of them. Did you love them like me? Did you not like them so much? Agree, disagree? Either way, you guys know I just want to get talking in the comments. And yeah, like I said, if you do this tag, link me below. If you just want to answer the questions to the tag, please put them below. I would love to read them. All right guys, so that's all for this video. I hope that you enjoyed it, and I will see you in my next one.